right. So this morning we at Chai Time is like we've been excited since months. For months. We've met these beautiful, lovely people, heard their story, and we thought, hey, we need to get them here, and we need to share this with our audience.
Yes.
And what better time to do this during the Christmas holidays?
Yes.
All right. So, love is what happens when two hearts find their happy place right beside each other.
Oh.
So today, joining us this morning on Chai Time is Vaibhav.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Parag.
Good morning. Hi, everybody.
Good morning. And Parag's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Mehta.
Hey, good morning to everybody.
Good morning. All right. So let's not waste any time.
Yes.
Let's just get on with it.
This is such an exciting show.
Yes,
I think all of our listeners are going to have an eye-opening experience. That is for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
So we'll let
Parag.
Yeah.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. I'm Parag Mehta. I grew up in Central Texas. And earlier this year, I got to marry the man of my dreams, Vaibhav. And our story kind of went viral unexpectedly. We did the most normal thing an Indian person could do, which is just to get married. And yet somehow, because we are two men and because we were breaking some barriers, the story went viral, not just in the U.S., but across India.
Yeah. And hi, everyone. My name is Vaibhav. And so I grew up in New Delhi and I moved to the US in 2011. And that's where I met the love of my life in Washington, D.C. in 2012. And it was so unexpected. As we did this, we were so nervous. Different feelings. We were as excited as we could be, but we were nervous just to get the community's response. And it has been fantastic so far. I mean, this is a testament that we are on this radio show among you amazing people. Yeah, it's been great so far.
Yay.
So let's begin with with how you guys met and what like the journey that you all have so far spent together, and let's begin from that, from your your beautiful story.
So we met in June of 2012. I was living in Washington, D.C., working in government, and I got invited by some friends to march in Washington, D.C.'s Gay Pride Parade. And normally I wouldn't go because it was, hot and I didn't like, being in big crowds. But for some reason that year, there was a lot of talk about the Supreme Court maybe legalizing same-sex marriage. And so I decided to join some friends from a Desi group called Kush who were marching. And I remember my friend Piyush called me. He was the president of the group. And he said, hey, we're going to do a marriage equality theme. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a barat, like an Indian-style barat. So it'll be boy, boy, and girl, girl. And I was like, oh, that's a horrible thing for me because A, I'm single, and B, it's June, it's going to be 100 degrees outside, and you want me to wear a sherwani? That's not a good idea. And so Piyush was very sweet. He was like, no, it's okay. You can wear shorts and a T-shirt. And I'm so glad that I went because that's the day that I met Vaibhav.
Oh.
So at the same time, this was my first year in the US, and I was very, very nervous to go to this Pride Parade. I actually wanted to march, but I wasn't out, and I'd never marched in a Pride Parade. So I'm contemplating whether I should march or I should just be a silent spectator. I'm like, yeah, let's go with the spectator bit right now. Let's not scandalize my family on national television. So I decided against marching, and I decided to, just go see this parade. And I was just excited because, I never understood a lot of who I was. And going to this parade was an eye-opener, seeing hundreds upon hundreds of people celebrating their sexuality, being proud of who they are, and not just them, their parents are out there. And, what I heard was there's a South Asian group that's marching. So I'm like, it'll finally get to see people like me, who look like me, who talk like me, and actually are gay and proud. So these guys were supposed to be, I think at the beginning, but in typical Desi fashion, they were running late. So they ended up being second to last. So I was standing there in 100-degree temperature, 3 hours, loving it, every moment of it. And as their float came in, there was Bollywood music playing and all these good-looking brown men and women dancing. And I'm like, ooh.
All these?
Well, there was a moment that Parag, like you mentioned, he was actually in the very front. He was wearing this very cute white T-shirt. It said Desi on it. And according to him, whenever he saw somebody remotely brown looking in the crowd, he would actually go and dance with them. So at one point of time, he actually came to me and I was like, oh, hey, Desi. And then, he came and I think we danced for maybe 30 seconds. And I was just smitten like a kitten. I'm like, who is this guy? And, I didn't think much of it. And I was taking lots and lots of pictures. So I went back and I'm, sitting on my computer. I was a grad student and it was a weekend. So I'm like, yeah, let's just see, what I captured today. So I'm looking at these pictures and I'm like, yeah, that guy, he was really cute. And, he seems really interesting. So let's look him up. So I started the journey of looking him up.
Yeah, you're calling it a journey. What you should call it is
basically
you
stalking.
Stalked me on Facebook.
Hey, in Desi words, we call it a journey.
Nice euphemism for it. So, the next day, I was actually getting ready to go to bed, and I remember looking at my phone, and there was a notification, and it said, Vaibhav Jain has poked you. And my first thought was, who's Vaibhav Jain? And my second thought was, who pokes on Facebook? I didn't even know that feature still existed. And this was back in 2012. So I just deleted it, didn't think about it, went to bed. I woke up on Monday morning, and the first thing I see is another notification. Vaibhav Jain has poked you. And I'm like, this guy again. So I deleted it. I showered, got ready, went to work. As soon as I get to my desk, I turn on my computer, open Facebook. There's a third notification. Vaibhav Jain has poked you. So now I'm irritated. And I deleted it, and I sent him this note that said, are you just going to keep poking me, or do you have something to say for yourself? And about an hour later, I got the most amazing message. It was this long message he sent on Facebook Messenger, but embedded in it was a photo that he had taken from the Pride Parade. Now, mind you, it wasn't a photo of like 50 of us marching. It was a close-up photo of just me, which is the creepiest thing you could ever get.
But if you were in India, it was like the most normal thing ever.
I was
right?
going to say romantic thing.
Yeah, I don't think that we should apply these standards to all people from India. For those of you who are from India, please forgive us for making these stereotypes. But then I read the message, and the message was actually very sweet because he said, look, I'm a grad student. I just moved here from India. I was always too afraid to march in the Pride Parade in Delhi because I was afraid of being outed. But I heard that there was going to be a Desi group marching in DC, and I wanted to feel that pride. Yeah. He said, and then I saw you, and I saw the way you were dancing with everybody and smiling, and I just had to know who you were. So the big question for me was, how did he know my name? Because we never spoke. And so apparently he went on Facebook, and he went to the name of the group that I was marching with and went through every single profile until he could find a photo of me where someone had tagged me. And then he started researching me and reading about the work I was doing in government and politics. And at the end of the message, he just said, it makes me feel really proud that somebody from the same homeland as me, but born and raised in the U.S., made it their decision to dedicate their life to advocating for LGBT people and for Desi people. So if you're ever free, I'd like to take you out for a cup of coffee to say thank you. And that won me over.
Oh.
Yeah, and
That's
to be honest, at that time, I was also looking for friends. I really didn't know anybody, so I was just struggling. A lot of people don't talk about this, but when we moved from India, it's a big cultural shock for us. We could be teenagers, we could be young adults, we could be older people, but there is a big, cultural shock, and there is an element of depression that you feel suddenly because we are from a community which is like so in everybody's business. There's no element of space and my bubble and all that, and suddenly you come to a society which is so different, and people don't interact with each other as much, and communities are very segregated sometimes. So I was struggling a lot, and I'm like, I need to find friends, and I just wasn't able to. So I was like, maybe I didn't really think much of it. I just knew that he was Jain, and bells were just ringing in my head, like, Vaibhav, this is a sign, Vaibhav, this is a sign, you have to talk to this guy. So I basically didn't think much of it. I'm like, maybe I can just make a good friend.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
great.
Yeah.
So, of course, we have to talk about the wedding. The big, grand Desi
You can
wedding,
call it
right?
a big fat it was pretty big and fat.
Yeah.
And, of course, I did get the chance to watch it. It was beautiful. Beautiful
It was. I
wedding.
cried this morning with it.
Oh,
and I'm
yeah.
still kind of like teary-eyed listening to you guys. It's just
So we got to talk about the wedding for sure.
Yes.
So the wedding took place in India, of course.
No,
right?
the first wedding took place in Texas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
in Killeen, Texas.
Killeen,
right?
Texas.
So the wedding was actually a 2-day affair, like a typical Indian wedding, and it had 3 functions. But it took place in Killeen, Texas. And why it
Okay.
took place in Killeen, Texas? Because now Parag and I live in New York, but Parag's family is in Temple, Texas. So that's a place in Central Texas, and Killeen is a big town right outside of Temple, Texas. And his parents were very kind, and they basically offered to help us through this entire journey. And they said, here's the deal. You know how our community functions. If you do it in our hometown, we can have uncles and aunties running in and out and doing everything for you. Versus if you do it in a city like New York, where you guys are based at the moment, you don't have a lot of friends and family right now over there. So think about it, do what you'd like to do, and we are always there to help you and support you.
But you should ask them, why did you guys decide to host it in Killeen?
Yeah.
Well, when the wedding came up, our first idea was that if Parag was regular heterosexual and he was bringing a my choice girl home, how excited would I be and what would we do for that wedding?
Yeah.
So once we set that parameter, it became very clear. You just hear these two people in love and all this thing. So we said we will be the part of that thing. So when we started planning, it was planned just like any other wedding.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, most of the other weddings that happen, there is so much pain and so much inhibition that the parents who can afford it, somehow or the other, when it comes to gay wedding, they tone it down quite a bit, even when they are participating. So I decided, and me and my wife decided, and all of us decided, that we will do exactly what a regular desi fat wedding would entail. Whether it's a sangeet or a wedding or a reception or whatever. And luckily for us, it actually came up. Now, my main concern was that I am excited, my wife is excited, my close friends are excited. How would people react, those who were peripheral? I don't know how they feel about gay wedding.
Yeah.
And that day when Sangeet came, I was looking around, and the amount of excitement all these 400 plus guests had, they told me that we are on the right path. All these people are just as happy as I am. So at the end of the day, it was absolutely a successful thing. My idea was that if everybody who comes have the same kind of excitement and energy like a regular wedding have, we made the mark. And I think in our case, we did make the mark.
You sure did.
So as Dad mentioned, there were 3 events. So we started with like a Sangeet and Garba because my family is from Delhi and Parag's family is from Gujarat. So Garba is a big thing in their culture in Gujarat. And, we coming from Delhi have to have some Bollywood beats. So we had like a very cute, Sangeet and Garba program, first of all of our families. And it was more of a welcome thing. And it was about 500 people we invited. Again, as we invited people, I have to tell you, we were so nervous. We were like, I don't know if people will show up. Wow. I have to be very honest. Parag and I looked at each other. We're like, we're doing this. Our parents are taking such a big step. But I don't know if people will show up.
Yeah, I mean, now we look back on it and we think, oh, it worked out really well. Yeah. But if you remember, the first conversations we had, we weren't sure about the invite list. There were friends of my parents and friends of his parents who we weren't sure how they would react to getting this invitation.
Yeah.
And so I remember texting with my mom because she's in this yoga group with these other ladies that she's friends with. And she actually said to me at one point, she's like, my friends are a little bit concerned. Like, what if there is some kind of violence? What if there is some kind of, hate against you? And so we really thought a lot about things like security, making sure that we have ways to protect our guests, to make sure the whole event's safe. But it wasn't an easy decision at the time.
It took us a while.
All right. So now we are going to talk to Parag's parents a little bit, of course, because, it's a whole different generation in your case, right? The new generations, the new kids, they embrace all this thing. But with the older generation, there's a lot of reservations. There are a lot of concerns. So we would like to get your input on that, of how you embrace this beautiful relationship. And, of course, your story and what you had to go through as well, being parents, right?
Right, yeah. So we are 72 years old. So all the people who are my generation can relate to that fact that what was our mindset, what was our inhibition, what were our fear. And basically, my generation people came, our biggest thing is, what would people say? And our value is defined by what other people think of us rather than what we know about us. So among that situation, what happened is back 20 plus actually, it was March 1999, 27th of March, my Parag was one of the topmost students. Academically, extracurricular-wise, respect-wise, religion-wise, Desi culture-wise. So I was on the 7th heaven, where I have a son who everybody wants to have it. Unfortunately, Parag actually at 425, we had a big event that day. He was getting a lot of awards. He was being number 1 in the class. And all along, we are just getting more and more excited about how wonderful my son is. But at about 4:25 of that evening, Friday evening, Parag said, Dad and Mom, I want to talk to you. Now, when the children say that, my generation people get a heart attack. because we know that the next thing that is coming is going to be bad. So I was thinking, what is he going to talk about? And I never in my dream thought that he will say I'm gay. I thought maybe I have a girlfriend who is not Indian or something else, something shocking like that. But he said very simply, he said, Dad, I'm gay. And I've known it since I was 10 years old. I was confused, but now I'm very sure I'm gay. And I actually thought about you guys and how painful it would be. So I was thinking that I'll stay in the closet. not tell you until you die, so you don't have to suffer all the things that goes with it. But it could not be done because, yes, last week I said out in the class out loud that I'm gay. So it's a matter of time you're going to find out. So that 3-minute speech that he gave me changed my best son into I rather die, because how am I going to face the society? And remember, this is 1999, about 6 months after Matthew Shepard was brutally killed in Wyoming or Colorado for being gay.
Okay.
This is the time when the HIV was going all over the place, and I'm a physician. So basically my nature was, I really was homophobic person at that time, as much as you can be. My profession requires me to take care of the HIV patients, so I did take care of them. But every time I would take care of one of the HIV patients, in my mind I would say, you brought it on yourself. Why would you do something like this? So I thought that being gay is a very aberrant thing. It is something not good, and all kind of hate was in my head. When my hero told me that I'm gay, it put me in a very awkward situation. So first I thought, I'll go and find the cure for it. I'll find the research. I'll hire the expert or whatever. When I went to the library, it took me about 3 hours to figure out that I was absolutely wrong. Gay is not a disease. It's not something to be changed. Normal, about 3 to 5% of the population have it. And I also knew that if somebody accepts the fact that gay people are normal, their children will not turn gay. So some people don't want to accept this. They're like, okay, if we accept Parag, then what happens if our children think it is okay? There are people, I found out, there are people who are born that way, they have a gender identity that way, and sexual preference that way. So then the big question was, how am I going to deal with this explosive news? I was very popular. I was president of my Gujarati Samaj, India Circle. People all over the place were connected with me. So I basically wrote my day, the Friday, the 27th. From morning till evening, and all the great things he did, all the amazing things he was bringing in. And then I said at 4:31, I asked a simple question. Do I love my son any less at 4:31 than I did it at 4:25? So once I asked that question, it was simple, that yes, I love my son the same way. So I said, now on, everything I have to do, whether it's a wedding we plan, or how I dealt with him, or how when I was talking to my friends and suddenly everybody's making a gay joke, do I be quiet or do I come out and say, by the way, Parag is gay? So I took a position that anywhere, actually I was speaking to SASA, that was an organization in California, and I was talking about confused Desi, who is really confused, parents or children. And one of the person asked me about, Uncle, what do you think about homosexuality? And from the tone, it looked like he was more about thinking that I would say it's aberration or something. So I took a pause right there. I said, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, let me share something very personal with you. My son Parag, you may not know him, he is such and such years old, and he is gay, and I'm proud of it. So the moment I said that, there were like 500 young people listening to me, it was like a shock to them. But it was also important, and I also read a letter to 50 people. Within 2 weeks, I mailed it, and I just simply told them that I was homophobic. I am not asking you to either hide it or whatever. I am simply telling you because you have played a very important role in making Parag who is today. Therefore, I think I owe the truth to you rather than it coming through the circuit, via circuit, via circuit. And in my life, I've made a lot of difficult decisions. But when I look back, that particular decision was one of the best and the most courageous decision I ever made. Because the moment that letter went, moment I would confront the truth, people suddenly realized that, listen, one of us is actually having this issue, and then they started turning. And I think the wedding and the 400 guests with all the enthusiasm, it was the result of the fact that they were all told way in advance. They did not have to hear through the third party that, yes, this is the situation. And then they started looking at how wonderful Parag is. And now we have converted a lot of people in the process who used to be just like me, homophobic. Now they were open minded.
You know, my mom is starting to tear up.
Yes.
And it's strange because it's been 20 years and it's still very raw for all of us when we talk about that period of time. I told my dad's story, and people have heard my dad's story a lot on social media and in the news. My mom had a different experience, and I have to tell you that when I came out, because I'm a mama's boy, and I've always been really close to my mom, I had expected the complete opposite. I had thought that she was going to be the one who was going to take my side and stand by me, and I was more worried about him. And in fact, it ended up being the opposite, and I just think it's important to hear what my mom also went through.
First time when he talked to me, I didn't believe. I went into shock. I said, no, no, this can't be true. My son is perfect, and this is not true. Maybe he's under some influence or he's in a bad company. That's why he's telling all these things. So we stayed in his apartment that night. I slept and I said, okay, this is bad dream. This is not true. But reality hit me next day. When I went to work, throughout the drive, I was crying. I went and saw my psychologist. I said, please tell me this is not true. He spent 2 hours with me and he explained, Dr. Mehta, this is true. This is true. Then I read so many books about the homosexuality. And finally, after 3 months, I accepted. I said, I love myself so much. He's not different. And eventually, I accepted that. And I love it.
I love you too.
You are beyond blessed, both of you, to have such great parents that support you and are there for you. And, just listening to y'all's story, just listening to y'all's story, it's so amazing that the amount of support that you guys have. And there are kids out there that are going through similar situations that are afraid to come out and that don't know how to do so. And you guys have just created such a great platform for them to even, like you shared this morning, so many people are reaching out to you guys and telling you their stories, and it's beyond amazing. And kudos to you guys for doing
Thank you. It absolutely is, Sasha. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional myself. And you know what Mom just mentioned? I love that I can call her Mom now. I love it.
She's gained 2 sons.
I know she has. But I think the greatness of these 2 people is not just that they accepted their son, but I think they accepted me as their son. Because, it's very difficult to first of all be okay with, with such a big decision and making sure that their son is gay and accepting it. But then when the son brings a partner in his life, that's a new reality altogether. Then they have to adjust to the fact that there is a person of the same gender that my son is now dating, is out in public with, is now publicly saying that he's my partner or boyfriend and now husband. So I think that in itself is so huge because, parents do have the courage. Yes, all our parents love each other. But I think what sets them apart is also how they could look beyond so much of our societal norms and just lead with love. Because I feel like all of our parents love us, that's the greatness of our community, that they always lead with love, and our love for our parents and their love for us is unconditional. And for them to, but our society and, our norms are such that they have to constantly think about, because at the end of the day, we are all societal creatures. We are social animals. We live in a society, and we have to be respectful of those norms and not challenge them constantly. Yeah. So challenging them was a huge thing for them. So I constantly think that what they did was amazing. It's amazing.
What's also interesting is how much they grew, because the story that you're hearing them tell happened in 1999. Fast forward 14 years later, I started to date Vaibhav. I tell my mom. I remember calling her one day and saying, "I've met this guy. I really like him. We've been together for about a year now, and I want you to meet him." And the first question she asked me, she said, "Is he out to his family yet?" And I said, "No, he's still in the closet. He hasn't told his parents he's gay." She said, "Then I don't want to meet him because he needs to do that process. He needs to take that step if he's serious about it. It's not serious until it comes out." And I was thinking, who is this woman I'm talking to who 14 years earlier was like, hide, hide, hide. And now she's the one saying, and I don't know if you know this, Mom, you were on speakerphone that day, so he heard you say that. And that was the thing that gave him the courage to say, your mom's right. I need to figure out how to tell my parents. Right. And so he started the process of coming out to his own parents, which I think was its own sort of interesting journey.
So, I have to tell you, I was deeply closeted when I moved to the US. I think part of the reason I moved to the US is that because I was sick and tired of living a dual life in India. I was constantly tired of people asking me, why are you like this? Why don't you play cricket? And, why don't you hang out with boys? And why do you walk like that? And why do you talk like that? So it was just too much. Like my school wasn't really a lot of fun for me. Either was college. It was very, very hard for me. So when I came to the US, I promised myself that I'm going to live a very honest life. I'm coming to a country where people accept me for who I am, hopefully. And, I don't have to lie to myself anymore. And possibly, I'm just going to live here, not tell my parents. They'll be happy there. They are pushing me for my wedding. I'll just keep delaying it. I'll keep delaying it. And then eventually, they'll forget about it. And I'll just live a bachelor, die a bachelor. They'll have their life there, and I'll have my life here. So I never imagined that actually I'll find somebody here. I had no hopes that I'll ever find anybody that I could date. So when I met Parag, he was a very public person. And he said, Vaibhav, I have to be very honest. I live a very public life and you're deeply closeted. I love you, but for this to work, you have to show some courage. And again, I don't want to push you, because let me tell you something, and this is something that I want to tell to all the gay and lesbian and transgender and bisexual and, everybody of the queer community who are out there and still closeted. It's your truth. Nobody can push you. You should never be pushed, or anybody should never even push you to tell when you're ready to come out. So I wasn't ready, and Parag said the same thing. He said, I know you're not ready, Vaibhav, but you owe it to your parents. You don't owe it to anybody else, but you owe it to your parents, because they've done so much for you. He had met them, in a different setting. I graduated, so I introduced him as my friend. So it was difficult, but, he said, you owe it only to them, not to anybody else, that, you're gay and just deal with it later on. So I started that process in 2013. I was very fortunate. I went to the WHO in Geneva. I got a fellowship with them, and I was working with them. And that time, my parents were so excited. They're like, oh my God, our kid is working for the United Nations. And they were like, in Hindi they say chhati chaudi hogi. Our parents, literally my parents' chhati doubled in size. They were so excited. And my father was like, dude, you're in Switzerland, beta. All the Bollywood movies were shot there. So I have to come there, and I have to sit in all of these trains that I've seen since 1970s. And I'm like, Dad, sure, let's do this. So he flew down to Zurich, and Parag said, Vaibhav, this is now or never, because what was happening is that as much as we love each other, we also want to be very public about our love. So there were pictures of Parag and me hanging out together, posting a picture of constantly with a boy. Some of my cousins, it wasn't rocket science. My cousins who were in the US, they started to figure out. Some of my friends started to figure out. And they started to needle me indirectly and ask me questions. So I was like, this is getting very close. And Parag said one thing to me, and I have to tell you, in this entire journey, Parag was incredibly supportive because he had gone through that process. So he said, Vaibhav, I want to make sure that the mistakes I made, you don't make them. Or the imperfections I had in my coming out story, I want you to get over those imperfections and do the best that you can when you tell your parents. So he said, just make sure that your parents don't find out from anybody else, because that in itself would devastate them. Because our, community, things can spread very easily, and you want to make sure that you control your message and you give the message the way you want to, versus some auntie, uncle, or some friend of yours telling, oh, Vaibhav is gay. So a week that I was with them in Switzerland, we went to Paris, just exploring the area, and then I had no courage. And the last day, they were in Zurich, and they were packing their bags to leave for Delhi. And I'm like, this is it. Like, this is 11 of the night. They're about to sleep in an hour. I have to talk right now. And I went outside of the room. I called Parag. I said, Parag, I think I'm going to do it. He said, I love you. Just know that I love you. And as I'm doing this, I had thoughts like, what if my father disowns me? He right now is financially supporting me in my graduate studies. What if he just says, I'm not going to pay you a single penny? What if my father gets really erratic and then just pulls my passport and say, nothing doing, you are coming back with us to India? And I had all these scenarios played out in my head, and Parag's like, don't worry. If your father doesn't support you, I'm going to support you. And if your father takes you back to India, don't worry. I'll come like a Bollywood hero and rescue you.
I had watched DDLJ.
So it's too much. But the reality is that this situation is in front of me, and it's finally confronting me, and I started to cry. And Parag told me, don't cry, Vaibhav, don't cry, because you have to be confident. Because if you show even a shred of discomfort or unsurety, your parents would think that there is a way out of it, or this is reversible. But I could not help myself, and I started to cry. And my parents were like, Kya hua beta? What happened? Are you okay? I was like, Dad, Mom, I just want to talk to you. They're like, don't worry. They thought that they're leaving, so I'm so upset. I'm like, yeah, I am upset, but I'm not upset because of that right now. But I want you to know this, that I am not interested in girls. And my dad's like, so what? That's fine. That's okay. And I said, I don't want to get married. To kya hua? Itne log hai, shaadi nahi karte, they don't get married. So it's okay. You get married when you want. I said, no, Dad, I'm actually attracted to men. And there was complete silence. And it was really uncomfortable. I think 5 minutes, they both looked at me in shock. And I have to tell you, my parents are not fluent in English. I come from a very regular middle class family in Delhi. So they don't even understand the concept of the word gay. So I had to sit down and explain it to them what it was. And that in itself was very awkward for me. But then I remember what Parag said. He said, you have to be confident and you have to know your own facts before you talk to your parents. Because again, if you show some element of dishonesty or some garbage you show in your conversation, they'll think, oh, he's lying or he's under some influence, as mom mentioned right now. He is probably under some influence, so he has bad company, and this can all be reversed. So my mom, dad just came up to me, and dad just put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "Beta, don't worry. It's going to be okay. I'm there with you." And then mom was really quiet, and she suddenly looked at dad. She said, "Arey, now he's said these things. We have to ask. I have to ask you these questions. I don't know." And then that was a series of about 3 hours of uncomfortable questions, really uncomfortable questions, I have to tell you. And I answered. And they had questions about my sexuality, how long I've known. And it was all very, very painful for us, but I knew we had to go through it. But as a family, we came out stronger. But one thing that my mom said, very poignant, that I still remember, is when my mom said, "Beta, I think I failed as a parent." And I was like, "Why are you saying that? Are you saying this because I'm gay? Please don't say that. No, that's not your fault." She's like, "No, beta, I think I failed because it took you 26 years to tell me such a big truth of your life. We are your parents. We should be the ones worrying about you. And 26 years, you worried about us, thinking how would we react." Wow. So from now onwards, I will do a better job as a parent to take care of you, to watch for you, and you live your life the way you have to. But beta, I beg of you, don't tell anybody, because log kya kahenge. We love you. Your father and I both love you immensely. But don't tell anybody, because, we come from a very small society. You live here, but we won't be able to survive there. People won't let us live. And that started a very difficult conversation for us, like over the next 5 years, where I had to convince them, no, it's okay. I came out, but now it's your turn. But I have to tell you, that night when I came out, I felt like the universe's, burden was taken off my shoulders. I slept like a baby that night. I slept so long. I slept so long that we would have missed my parents' flight, but they didn't sleep a single moment. They kept crying in their bed. We were sharing this room, and they kept crying in their bed. And my father's just consoling my mom, putting his hand on her shoulder, on her head, and they didn't sleep a single moment, and they just cried, and I slept like a baby.
What's interesting is the reaction was out of fear, right? They had the same fear that my mom had, that my dad had, even though he overcame it very quickly. So that happened in August, and then fast forward to January. My dad calls me and says that he's going to India for the first time in 23 years. He's going to be visiting some of our family members and some of his friends. And I asked him, I said, "Dad, when you go to India, are you by any chance going to Delhi?" And he said, "Do you want me to go to Delhi?" And I said, "I think it would be really nice if you could go to Delhi and meet Vaibhav's parents." And he said, "Sure, happy to do it." And I remember the day that you landed in Delhi, they picked him up from the airport, and it was radio silence. For 2-3 days, we didn't hear anything. No phone calls, no WhatsApp messages. I kept calling my mom. I said, "Have you heard anything? How did it go?" He was just going to spend the day with them. And then she said, "No, I've heard nothing either." And then on the third day, my mom texted me a photograph of my dad sitting on the couch in his house with his mom and dad, and they're all smiling together. And then he finally called me and told me what happened. He had a really interesting conversation with his parents.
Actually, we had two opposites. His parents were of mode, "Log kya kahenge?"
Yeah.
And we were of the mode, "Log ko jo kehna hai wo keh de."
Nice.
Such hamara hai.
Yes.
So it was a conflict, and his parents are the nicest people you ever meet, very easy to going, whatever. So my job was to go to their house, open up the subject they did not want to talk to me about, and then give my gnan to them that, listen, I've been there, it has been 20 years, but I've been there. So I started asking, they're very nice, as if nothing has happened, as if this homosexuality thing is not, breakfast khao, ye karo, wo karo. I set them down. I said, I'm here actually to talk about Vaibhav and Parag. So that was the time his mom again froze with the fear. And their main thing, so I said, what happened since Vaibhav told you? So their story was that they sat in the plane and they did not even discuss with each other about our son is gay. And this was like 3-4 months later. They said, we have never yet to discuss this thing because every time we think about it, we break down with emotion, so we decided not to do it. So then I had to tell them, I said, sooner or later, we have to confront the truth. And then I also used a very simple analogy. Supposing Parag was a girl, and he was amazing, just like you're saying. What would be your reaction if they are in love? Would you encourage them to get married early or late? But their whole idea was that, just like Vaibhav and some other people, let's not do anything. Let's keep it under the secrecy. You enjoy what you want to enjoy. We know what you're doing, but not everybody has to know it. Well, I was of the opinion that as long as you're lying to yourself and as long as you're not authentic yourself is out, you cannot be happy. And one thing about Parag I know, Parag can never be happy being unauthentic. If he does something wrong, he has to come out and say it. If he has to accept it, whatever it is. So then it was a long conversation, and I thought I had won. But apparently, after I left, they went back to it. So they could not argue with me. As you know, I can argue pretty good. so they could not come up with any logical reason. But they kept saying, yeah, India hai, yahan aisa nahi hota. So I told them, I said, listen, let me tell you about India. I have been to 5 different towns in my visit, Morbi, Jamnagar, Rajkot, Ahmedabad, and Bombay. And everywhere, I would have about 50 to 60 relatives of mine. They were uneducated, most of them, high school degree or less. They are business people. And everywhere I opened my subject and I said, I am back after so many years. I want you to fill in what is happening. So I introduced what is happening with my wife and then came to Parag. And I would say, as you know, or you might know, Parag is gay and he also has a boyfriend that we are looking forward to. It might go somewhere. And all my relatives, none of them actually objected to it. Most of them actually came to me and say, Vijay bhai, you're a great guy. Thank you for sharing with us. And they came. So I used that experience. I said, these people are same education or less educated than you, and they had no trouble accepting.
3 years ago, I went to Delhi. I stayed with Vaibhav's parents. First time when I entered the house, me and Renu, Vaibhav's mom, we hugged each other, we shared our emotions, and we cried a lot. Then afterwards, I was telling her my experience. And still she was saying yes, but she did not commit it. Then she started showing me the pictures and albums and DVD of her older son's wedding with the girl. And she was so excited. Constantly she was explaining, Vaibhav is like that, Vibhor is like that, and Neha is. I said, you love Vibhor. Don't you love Vaibhav? She said, oh, of course, he's my son, and I love him tremendously. I said, then think about him also. He's in love, and we need to help him. No, Didi, this is India. We can't do anything here. You are in America for 40 years, so you are accepting easily. We spent a lot of time. We went shopping, and gradually they agreed for marriage, wedding.
Yeah.
They said, we will do the wedding, but in America, not in India. I said, that's fine. First step. Yeah. So we went to shopping center. So my boss dad telling me, Didi, ye sari buy karo, ye sari buy karo. I said, you just tell me yes, and I'll buy everything.
Yeah, she kind of extorted him.
So you want me to buy a sari from you? Yes. Just get your son married to my son.
So it looked like that time they accepted and they were ready for wedding in America.
Yeah, typical of my parents. Just like my dad was like radio silence for 3 days. We didn't hear anything. Same with my mom. She tells us, I'm going to go to India. I'm going to get their permission for the wedding. And 3 days go by and we hear nothing from her. And we're literally sitting by the phone, looking at WhatsApp, like, why aren't these people communicating? And then on the 3rd day, she goes back to Gujarat to her sister's house. And she finally calls me. And she says, I have good news. I said, oh, what's the good news? She said, I bought a sari today. I said, I don't really care that you bought a sari. She said, I bought a wine-colored sari. It's your wedding sari. I'm wearing it at your wedding. Oh. And that's how I found out that my mom had gotten permission for us to get married.
And what's interesting is, mom and dad were very, very instrumental in getting my parents on the right, side. But what also helped was they never talked about this. Again, just like our community does. We don't talk about uncomfortable issues. So when my parents found out, Apparently, I found out from my mother later, she blamed herself. And she thought that if I talk to my husband, I think he blames me as well. So what will I talk about? I am so embarrassed. And dad never talked about it because he thought that mummy would be very hurt. So apparently they never even discussed the subject. And that in itself was killing them.
Yeah, exactly.
And they opened in front of dad for the first time, mummy papa did. And dad is like, do you realize how many parents like you suffer? He talked about his story. Mom, when she talked about their story. And I think it's so important to learn here that we all have shared experiences. But if only we opened up more. And it was very difficult. My mother tells me there were times my father would get up in the middle of the night crying and say, "मैं सब कुछ बेच दूंगा. I will sell my property. I will sell everything. I will go to America. I'll just live with Vaibhav and I'll take care of him for the rest of my life. I don't want any of this. If this is what the society is to my child, I don't care." And it was very hard for them. But when these two went there, it actually gave them some hope that these are our seniors. They've actually lived, yes. People can easily say, and I used to also think the same thing. Oh yeah, this is America. You guys can do anything. But our lived experiences are the same. We are still of the same community and we feel pain. Just the way we feel love, we feel pain. So these two actually helped open up a lot of what my parents, when they hadn't experienced these emotions. So they helped them experience their emotions and come to the right side.
Yeah. I mean, I think the moral of the story of all of this is we always have fear of the unknown.
Yes.
Even Vaibhav's mom said, okay, you can be gay, you can live together, you can get married in America, but we're not going to tell our family members. Because her mother was still alive at that time, Vaibhav's grandmother. And because she was afraid, like, well, how would my mother react? Or how would my brothers react? They're from a very small town outside of Lucknow. So, okay, maybe in America it works. And then Vaibhav's father told their friends in Delhi, maybe in Delhi it's cosmopolitan, it works, but not in a town like Barabanki where his grandmother lived. But then, little by little, she got courage. And I remember last year, she finally called up her mother and said, "Mom, I have something I have to tell you, and it's about Vaibhav." And the grandmother already knew because all the cousins had already told her, but she played along. She said, "Oh, what do you have to tell me?" And she started crying, and she said, Vaibhav is gay, and he's in love with this boy, and he's going to marry him, and his name is Parag. And the Nani said...
And Nani asked Mummy, "Tu ro kyun rahi hai? Vaibhav khush hai, Vaibhav swasth hai, he's happy, he's healthy. Why do you care? Wow. Who cares?"
An 85-year-old woman in a small town in India, that was her reaction.
Uneducated, but it's the perspective that she's had over the years that she's like, family, members of our family matters so much more than what people think outside. Who cares? That's the perspective she gave my mom. And I think what helped me a lot was Parag gave a very good recommendation is finding allies. So I found allies in my cousins. So I started slowly coming out to my cousins who were of my age and even younger than me. And I said, "I've told you, my work is done here. Now you tell your parents. And you have to do it in a way that they understand because you get me."
So his younger cousins who lived with his grandmother, they started talking to her. They would see things in the news watching with Nani, and they'd say, "Nani, see this? These are gay people. They're protesting for their rights." There was a Supreme Court case going on in India at the time. It was getting a lot of coverage. So Nani slowly started getting the idea that, oh, there are people like this out there. Okay. And so little by little, they made it possible. And what was really wonderful about all this is that because Vaibhav's mom had the courage to finally tell her mother, when we went in January to do our wedding shopping, he asked his mom, he said, "I really want to take Parag to Barabanki. I really want him to meet Nani." And she said, "Okay, let's go." And we flew to Barabanki. We did a day trip there. I sat on the bed with his grandmother. She gave me her blessing. And when we gave the invitation for our wedding, the first invitation always goes to the senior-most member of the family. All my grandparents have passed away. All of his others have passed away. She's the oldest. And the first invitation his dad handed to his grandmother. And she took it, and she blessed it with her head, and she read it, and she gave us her blessing. Oh. She passed away a few months ago, but before she died, she gave us both her Ashirwad, which meant a lot.
So the message to, if you have a child or loved someone who is LGBTQ, these are the facts. 3 to 5% of the people are born that way, so it's not something unusual. Number 2, if you let them live authentic life, don't try to hide it. If you want to die 50 times small at a time, it will be more painful than the way I took a jump within 14 days, going to the whole world and letting them know back in 1999, the amount of pain would be much less. And the other thing we don't understand is how people who are gay, they are traumatized. They have been subjected to ridicule. they always have a guilty feeling. Like Parag was thinking, how would mom and dad feel the pain if I come out? So in order to love them, we need to be doing honor healing, not honor killing. So in honor healing, we take a simple situation that whatever is the fact, we are going to face it. If we can have to face it tomorrow or today, I rather face it today than tomorrow. So most of the time when people come out, they hear the words, I wish you were dead, I'm going to disown you, or actually there is a physical violence, or generally the people completely shut off. So I say to the parent that for your own sake, you are choosing a path that is a lot more painful than if you just do the way I did it. And if anybody ever wants to have an issue like that, I will be very open to talk to them or talk to other issues. So let's do honor healing and not honor killing.
I love that.
And what Parag and I haven't shared is that we actually, growing up, we had suicidal tendencies. We were so depressed. We were so worried to tell our parents. Parag, I'm sorry, Parag, I'm sharing this, but he actually tried to commit suicide 2 times because he was so worried that my parents would be devastated if I tell them. I constantly thought about suicide because the trauma that we were going through internally, we didn't have anybody to talk about it to. And we were just frustrated and we were just killing ourselves within.
Which is part of why, ever since the wedding, we've made an effort to talk about it publicly. And so we have engaged on social media. We've talked with Indian reporters. It's been covered widely in the Indian press. And I hope it starts to change things.
What is the one message that you guys would give to someone that is going through a similar situation?
Be patient. One of the things that I learned with my mom is that it doesn't happen overnight, the acceptance and the love, right? It takes time. And there's a sort of funny story between the two of us. So my mom didn't accept right away. She obviously had to go through a whole, learning of her own. And I actually resented her for it. I was mad at her for a long time because I remember saying, you're my mother. You're supposed to love me no matter what. Like serial killers on death row, when they're being executed, their mothers are still in the audience saying, I love my son. I said, how can you not love me just because I'm gay? But 3 years after I came out to her, I was living in Washington, D.C., and she was living in Texas. And she sent me a care package, and it was DVD, Bollywood movies, because we always watch Bollywood movies together. And the movie was Dostana, which I don't know if you've seen it, but it's Abhishek Bachchan and John Abraham and Priyanka Chopra. And it's this movie about these 2 Indian guys in Miami who want to live in the fancy condo with the girl, but they have to pretend to be gay in order to do it. And so they're making fun of being gay. And there's this one scene in the movie where Abhishek Bachchan's mom makes a surprise visit from India and finds out that her son is supposedly gay, and she has a very bad reaction to it. And Abhishek Bachchan is upset that his mother had that reaction. He says the same thing I did, which is, how could you not love me as I am? You're my mother. And he storms out of the apartment, and he is very angry at her. And when he comes back to the apartment that night, his roommate Priyanka Chopra is waiting for him. And she says, why did you do that to your mother? And he said, because why did my mother have that reaction? She should love me unconditionally. And Priyanka says, you had your whole life to come to terms with who you are. And you gave your mother 2 minutes. And I remember watching that movie that night, and I paused at that moment, sitting in my apartment by myself, and that was the day I forgave my mom. Because I understood I had been so unfair to her, that I had expected her to accept who I was in 2 minutes when I took myself 20 years to do it. So my message to others, whether you're a parent or a child, is be patient. Be understanding. Try not to say things you're going to regret, but if you do, forgive. Don't hold on to every grievance and every wrong question and every awkward conversation, because we're all trying our best. We're all doing our best through this process. Do your best.
Yeah, the one thing I would like to tell people is when somebody comes out, you're going to be very angry, you're going to be shocked, you're going to be in pain. But don't forget, that moment is such a defining moment in your relationship with the child that if you can't come up with anything, just give a hug and stay quiet, take time out, think about 24, 48 hours, and then frame your whole dialogue and tell them. Because they are at the peak of their anger, unhappiness, all kind of frustration. That is the time their system blows. And you are receiving at that end, and you are absolutely caught unaware, just like I was. So the best thing to do is just give a hug and just say, I love you. Do not say any more word than that. Take your time. You have a whole life left to give him a lecture. But at that time, make that moment so defining that he or she does not think that they have to do something drastic.
The thing about patient that Parag mentioned, and right after I told my mother, she flew back to India. She used to call me every single day for 1 hour and just cry on the phone. क्यों हो गया? ये क्या हो गया? ये कैसे हो गया बेटा? क्या करेंगे? हम क्या करेंगे? And I listened to her. Give them time. Give them the importance. Don't just like, I've told them and that's it. My job is done here. No, you have to hold their hand. You have to hold their hand and tell them, I'm still your son. You know my truth, but you know what? I still love you regardless of what you think of me, because that's the kind of sanskar, that's the kind of, values you've given me. And that's one. But the other thing is respect. Don't disrespect them if they instantly hate you. Dad is right. 24 to 48 hours, give yourself, like parents should give themselves. But if they don't instantly hate them, because they are just responding to out of anger and unsurety and fear.
And the unknown.
And the fear of the unknown, exactly. Log kya kahenge? So just be patient, yes, but also be respectful. Be respectful of your parents. That's the greatness of this culture, of our culture, our community, is that we are so, the bond between a parent and a child is so beautiful. It's such a respectful bond. Don't forget that bond. And lead everything with love. Always remember, ladai ho, na ho, acha ho, bura ho, always lead with love. They are not talking to you. They are not accepting you. You still lead with love. Because love is the most powerful, element out there. And we live in such, our society, our circumstances are such that everybody is becoming so hateful. So lead with love, lead with kindness. And I promise you, it gets better. It really does get better. It got better for me. It got better for Parag, for his parents, and for my parents.
Wow. Amazing. It's time to go. I'm so sad because I want to hear more. I want to talk more, but it is time to go. And, thank you guys so much for sharing your beautiful story, beautiful parents. And you guys are beyond amazing. I mean, I hope that this message that we have sent today inspires people, opens their minds, and are more accepting, So,
Thank you, Sasha,
so
and thank you, Lynn.
But if anybody needs help, they can always reach out to us. We are all on the
Please,
Facebook.
yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm the only Vijay uncle on Facebook.
Vijay Uncle.
and he does talk to parents. So if you do need
Right.
you
I
someone
will
to talk to
pick
your
up the
parents, he
phone,
does.
Talk to your loved ones. So
Wow.
Vijay uncle, no space in between, and last name is Mehta. You can reach out to me, and I'll be very happy to do whatever I can do to help
Oh,
you.
that
Whether
is
you are
so
a
nice.
parent or whether you are a child, we can make it help. Like I said, honor healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sasha, I mean, we appreciate what you're saying. I just want you guys to know that it helps that people like you are telling these stories and telling it to an audience that needs to hear it. But we're not that amazing. We're not that extraordinary. What are we? We're a family that loves each other, and we're two people that got married. That's should be the most ordinary, normal thing in the world, and because of stuff like this, it will be.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, all the listeners.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So thank you for tuning in with your Chai Time Girls here on 99.5 FM. Yali Madad Kuda Hafiz. Ciao, Sastriyakal. Bye. Adios. Arrivederci. Sayonara. Remember, my friends?
It's chai time.
Anytime.
Anywhere.
Bye-bye. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.